Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief. A stick inside their skull would...
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 59. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics. We're working feverishly to get Headquartered, the book on the Monkees' solo careers, out in February or March of 2020 in time for Beatlefest. My co-author, Michael A. Ventrella, will be attending and selling copies of it and our previous Monkees book there. I'm doing the final edits and image placement for the TTV scrapbook. It looks really good, and I will be turning it in soon. I just got the assignment to do an article for Back Issue magazine on Underdog. The Warren Kremer book is due back in February, and I'm still working on my own Light Up Your Life travel agency, and of course, the Mad book. Our guest today is an artist and writer who has worked on a number of rock and roll biography comic books, plus books such as Cartoon Flophouse featuring his own characters. Here he is, Michael Aushenker. Okay, on the phone today I have Michael Aushenker. How are you today?
Hello. Aloha, everyone.
And as per usual on the Fun Ideas Podcast, I usually start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in your case, comic books, writing, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, let's see. Where do I begin? That's a long story. I guess if I were to begin with my first published work, I grew up really into a lot of animation, as well as comics. A lot of traditional comics like Marvel and DC, but also my mom is French, so she would bring editions of bande dessinée, like Tintin and Asterix. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up on that in terms of comics, and as well comic strips like the, Peanuts and The Far Side and whatever was cool at the time. And then on the animation side, when I was growing up, there were a lot of reruns on television. So we had a 2-hour block in Southern California of Max Fleischer Popeyes, and the same show had Jay Ward cartoons, non-Bullwinkle, like Super Chicken, George of the Jungle, Tom Slick. It was Tom Hatton's show, which was the Popeye and Friends on KTLA. Yeah, and so that exposed me to a lot of Fleischer. Of course, Warner Brothers, heavy circulation of Looney Tune reruns, and Woody Woodpecker, all the Walter Lantz stuff. And I actually... Tex Avery is definitely a big hero, because I do humor comics, so he was a huge influence in addition to the Fleischer Popeyes. And the thing about Tex Avery, growing up, even at a young age, I realized that even though he was known for the Warner Brothers stuff, a lot of his best work was actually done for other studios, like the Droopy cartoons at MGM,
right?
And my favorite, which was actually the Walter Lantz stuff, which were really oddball, like Crazy Mixed Up Pup, and the one called Shh, which was about the guy who goes, he's on the brink of a nervous breakdown, and you probably know that one.
Right. Don't they sing like Rockabye Baby or something like that and put him to sleep over and over again?
Yep. The Tilly Willy, right? The Tilly Willy. And Ma and Pa, which was not Walter, was not Tex Avery, but I love those Ma and Pa cartoons as well, the Walter Lantz ones.
Mm-hmm.
Sugarfoot, all these weird ones. And, all of that really went into feeding my imagination and wanting to become a cartoonist in some way, whether animated or print. And I did... my first published work was actually a children's book called Get That Goat.
Oh.
That came out when I was 19, and I won a contest with a publisher out of Kansas City called Landmark Editions, and they sold hardcover children's books through the school, I think Scholastic or some kind of system where they'd get it into schools. And David Pilkey, is that his name? The guy who did Captain Underpants?
Oh, yeah.
He started at the same time at the same company with his children's book, his first one. And so, I went for, that was something I juggled. I was attending Cornell back east, and I was juggling my Ivy League schoolwork with creating this children's book. And so, and that was very heavily influenced by all the stuff that I was growing up on. And comics, of course, were big. And at Cornell, we had a collective that did a quarterly magazine called Strip, and that was like, essentially comics. And some of the people who came out of that are New Yorker cartoonists today and independent cartoonists today, and I can list them later. But in any case, we were and actually one woman who participated, she went on to be a writer and producer on Desperate Housewives and Breaking Bad, which was kind of funny.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, Patty Lynn. Yeah, but anyway, then after college, I got into comics officially, professionally, and my earliest work was for Caliber Press. I did a thing that turned out to be a one-shot. It was supposed to be a series, but it didn't sell well enough. It was a one-man comics humor anthology called Bound and Gagged, and it was on Iconographics, which was Caliber Press's answer to Fantagraphics. And so that came out, and that sent me to my first ever Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con in 1992, and I met Jack and Ross Kirby for the first and only time. Yeah, so that was right out of college. Excuse me here, and at the same time, I landed work contributing a comic strip that I created called Chipmunks and Squirrels to a Seattle newspaper called The Stranger, and the art director there was James Sturm, who went on to do, you probably know his work, he did a lot of graphic novel work. And then I began contributing to Heavy Metal magazine at the same time. There was a thing called Strip Tease, not to be confused with Strip, the thing at Cornell, and Strip Tease was edited by a guy named Mark Martin, and he was a humor cartoonist, and Striptease was basically the black and white oasis within all the airbrushed vixens from Venus and heavy metal. There was like black and white alternative comics, and Michael Cooperman was taking part of that, Sam Henderson, Mac White, who else? The guys who did Trailer Trash, who I can't remember their names. It was a who's who of the alternative scene, and for like 3 years I contributed various comic strips to that in heavy metal, and Kevin Eastman owned it at the time, so I used to joke that I was getting paid in turtle money. Ninja Turtle money. Yeah. So that all happened kind of almost simultaneously after college. Yep.
Now, I know you did... go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And just to tie a bow on what I said earlier, all my humor stuff really, the kind of energy and pacing and everything that I tried to do really came from, not so much comics as much as animation, like all the Walter Lantz, Tex Avery stuff that I talked about, Warner Brothers.
Now, when you were attending Cornell, were you taking any classes that were related to art or writing or anything, or is it a completely different subject?
Well, it's a good question. I was going to raise this issue. So when I was in high school, the way that I would rebel against, doing really dry stuff like European history and math and whatever, was to doodle caricatures in my notes. And actually, that was earlier. That was like junior high. High school, I was already enrolled in a visual arts program at the high school there, and so I was doing fine arts. And when I got to Cornell, I was a painting major. But then when painting became my homework, it started to feel like a chore. So the way I would rebel against painting in college was to do essentially children's books and comics. And so I feel like I was always rebelling against whatever my core curriculum was. And when fine arts became my core curriculum, by the time I was in college, it wasn't that I had mastered it and I was bored with it. It was more like I just didn't, I wasn't happy doing it, you know. So I realized, I guess, in college, somewhere midway through college, that what I wanted to do was combine the writing and the art, you know, and so that's how I kind of got more and more into comic books.
Now, the stuff I know you for best, I know you for other things, obviously, but you mentioned Chipmunks and Squirrels, and then other things like those Unstoppable Rogues and Cartoon Flophouse. How did those series come about?
Well, you know, while I was doing the heavy metal stuff, I was preparing, just doing a lot of comics. I was kind of on a tear in my early 20s and creating stuff, and a lot of it, including Unstoppable Rogues and Elgato Crime Angler, you know, was really being coming from the entertainment I was watching, more like, in the case of Elgato Crime Angler, which was a goof on you know, it's basically a goof on superhero comics with a Mexican wrestler protagonist. He was like the world's dumbest wrestler and a mama's boy, and anyway, and a banana-phobe. Bananas threatened his masculinity. And you know, that actually came from Republic serials. I was in college binging on a lot of Republic serials, like the Purple Phantom Strikes Again kind of stuff, or The Adventures of Captain Marvel, which were actually very brutal. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they're very
Captain
violent.
Marvel one,
and,
yeah,
they're nothing like the Captain Marvel Shazam comics. You know, the Batman and the Shadow was a good one with the Black Tiger. You know, and those, you know, and at the same time, on my breaks home in L.A., I lived off Melrose Avenue, which was very trendy, and they had a store called Wacko, and Wacko had all kinds of novelty stuff, and among the novelties they had were black and white postcards of Mexican wrestlers like Hurricane Ramirez and El Santo, and that was really my first exposure to Mexican wrestlers. They were essentially stills from the movies, but I wasn't familiar with the movies at that point, having not grown up in the Latino community. And so that I thought, you know, that would be a good character, you know, for my goof on the Republic serials, and that's how my Elgato character kind of came together. And the other stuff, like Unstoppable Rogues, were really just taken from a lot of animated cartoons, but just kind of made a little edgier and more raw, you know, and also as well from, I think the cartoonist's name was, I'm trying to remember, he did a thing called Amy and Jordan. I don't remember the cartoonist's name. And it was just a very raw, like simply drawn, like purposely primitively drawn thing about these two characters, and that kind of influenced me doing the Unstoppable Rogues. I wanted to do these like two happy-go-lucky characters that were drawn kind of very crudely, happy-go-lucky, brazenly, sailing through these horrible situations, but never losing their kind of like their bright-eyed, bushy-tailed view of the world, you know, and that's kind of where that came from. So yeah, you know, soaking up a lot of different sources, you know.
And the Cartoon Flophouse, the Greenblatt, the bellhop. I was always curious about him because are you familiar with Richie Rich and Billy Bellhops? It's like a one-shot.
Actually, Actually, I know Richie Rich, of course, but what was the bellhop character called?
There's a one-shot they did like in the late 70s called Richie Rich Meets Billy Bellhops, and it was probably going to be an ongoing series until somebody realized, do kids even know what a bellhop is? So, if you're not familiar with it, okay, I was just kind of curious if it was like an inspiration of sorts, but I guess not. So.
No, I'll tell you exactly where my inspiration came for Greenblatt the Great. It was actually, so my mom is French, as I mentioned earlier, and my uncle, her youngest brother, had a studio in Paris that he wasn't using. He was already married and had a villa somewhere, and he had this apartment in Paris, and I thought, why don't I go there right after I graduated from Cornell and live in Paris for 6 months? And because he let me use all I had to do was pay for the utilities, he let me use the studio. So I wound up in Paris at the end of my graduation year, and I was living there and everything, and at the newsstands, they had a comics anthology called Psychopath, Psychopat, like psychopath, and it was essentially a version of Fluide Glacial, which is like a famous anthology in France, of comics that were sold at newsstands, and this was kind of like a copy in a sense, and anyway, in Psychopath, there was a strip, which is still running, a Belgian strip called Cowboy Hank, Henk. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it, yeah. I've never really read it, but I know about it, yeah.
Yeah, so it was done by these two guys, Kamagurka and Herr Seal, whose real name is Peter Van Herr Seal, and he's a friend of mine now on Facebook, which is cool. And this strip blew my mind. It was actually the first time I had seen it was in Raw. The Art Spiegelman Raw books.
Yeah.
So if you remember, there was one or two editions of Raw that had a kind of a big burly blonde guy with a blonde pompadour.
Oh yeah, okay. So then I probably have seen this. So okay.
Yeah. So they were translated, and they were actually. I remember they registered with me, but they weren't like the best thing I had ever read. I mean, they were just like abstract avant-garde gag cartoons in Raw. But then when I got to Cornell, and so I had seen Cowboy Hank a few years earlier, but when I got to Paris, and I saw those Psychopaths, I was buying those Psychopaths off the newsstands, they had a version of it called Cowboy Jean, like they changed the name to Jean, Jean, like Jean. And it was the same strip, and they were really like dirty and hilarious. And there was one strip in particular that just blew my mind. It was just the funniest gag strip I had read in years, and essentially it was an absurdist strip, and I wanted to do something like it. So the Greenblatt the Great, if you look at those early strips, they're kind of a little bit trying to be in the style. Like I threw in a lot of stuff that I saw in Europe, like road signs and all kinds of designs of buildings and building signage that was very French and European. Okay. And I kind of made it Tintin-ish. In terms of like the character designs and stuff like that, the supporting characters, and my goal with that was to also do an absurdist strip, like as crazy and freewheeling and nonsensical as Cowboy Hank. Okay. And so that's where Greenblatt the Great was. I mean, Greenblatt the Great was essentially me, not copying Cowboy Hank, but finding a vessel in which to just have a character that was just balls out absurdist. Yeah. And so that's really where it came from. It came from Cowboy Hank, and years later, I'm happy to say I'm Facebook friends with the artist Peter Van Herr Seal, who they came out. That strip came out of the Flanders part, the Dutch part of Belgium, not the French part. And when I last year in 2018 or September 2018. I was in Paris for a week, and I took a day and went for an evening to Brussels, because you could take the train from Paris. It's very close. And I met Peter in person, and he actually treated me to a half and half, which is like a type of alcohol at this his favorite tavern in Brussels. And we hung out, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I lugged my big, huge volume printed in Spain of Cowboy Hank comics in Spanish that I can't read, and I lugged it all the way to Europe so he could sign it. And he actually drew portraits of myself and my girlfriend at the time in my book, and he was really cool. And I met his fiance; they're now married, and I had the best time meeting him. And he was really salt of the earth, and he invites me every time I'm in Europe to come and stay at his place. So it turned out to have quite a very many years later, it paid off quite well. I got to know him as a friend.
Wow. I'm going to have to investigate those strips again, because once you said Raw, that clicked in my head. I go, I've seen this stuff. So it's like, but, I have to, I'll look it up after the show here. Just
yeah, they're like one-pagers in Raw, and they're usually one-pagers, a lot of these strips. And the one in Raw was kind of like, from what I remember, was kind of like a goof on a private detective strip. The one that caught my imagination, I've never found it again. I have the Psychopath somewhere, buried in boxes somewhere, but I haven't really found it in any like American translations or other collections. But it was basically this guy, Cowboy Hank, is having an affair with a married woman, and the guy, the husband, the cuckolded husband, finds out and beats the crap out of him, and he winds up head to toe in bandages in the hospital, and there's only a little slit for his tongue. And when the lover, the female, shows up at his hospital bed, he sticks his tongue out the little slot, for the mouth. Like, the only thing he can move in his whole body is his tongue, and he asks her if she wants the 69, and that's how it ends. And it's much funnier in the execution that I'm telling it now. But that was the exact strip.
Yeah,
that was the exact strip that did it, and it was just so hilarious and crazy. And Peter Van Herseal, or who goes by Herseal, he's a very talented painter in addition to a cartoonist. If you're on his Facebook page, he's always sharing these amazing oil portraits and even political gag cartoons that are basically oil painted. He's goofed on Trump. He's goofed on, the heads of other European states. He's kind of political, kind of left-wing, I guess, but they're very funny no matter what your political views. They're just very amazingly painted, basically political cartoons. He's super talented, and he's always having exhibits in Europe. He has one, I think, in Rotterdam right now as we speak.
Does his work appear in that, I've lost the name, but it's that European or French political humor magazine that unfortunately had that assassination coup a couple of years ago or whatever.
Right, the Charlie Hebdo thing.
Yeah, does his work appear in that publication or no?
I don't think he ever took part in that. Cowboy Hank has been running for years in something called Humo, Humo, which is, I guess, a humor magazine in the Flanders part of Belgium. I don't think he took part in Charlie Hebdo, to my knowledge, and he definitely wasn't on staff. Otherwise, he might not be alive today.
Right. The only reason I asked is because he said the political slant, so I thought, maybe he does that as well. So yeah. Now, you still publish your comics today, or are you on to other projects, which we may talk about here?
What am I doing now?
Well, do you still publish your those comics that we're talking about, newer issues, or are you completely done with those? I haven't talked to you in a while. It's been a couple years. So what I've done in more recent years, comics wise, I'm actually driving around the Bay Area right now, near Berkeley and Palo Alto and all that, because I just had a meeting today with Mel Smith, who has published a line. He revived the whole heavy metal biographical comics that Todd Loren did in the 80s, and
Since 2014, I've been the lead writer on those comics to heavy metal and punk bands, real ones, and we do the kind of unauthorized biographies. Yeah. They've sold very well across North America and in Europe. They're biographies about these various bands. We started with Slayer and Metallica. Mm-hmm. I've written most of his line, all the way to Pantera and System of a Down and Tool, and we started punk stuff with NoFX. We're getting into K-pop. We're going to have a 2NE1 book. We're going to have, it's really going in every direction. Oingo Boingo is almost done, which looks amazing. Mm-hmm. What's the other one? Sublime. So it's starting to take off in different genres. We're going to have rap as well, and that's been fun. So I had a kind of a big powwow with him today, and so I've been doing that since 2014, 2015. Yeah. I write them, and he matches them with various artists from really all over the world. He's gotten people from the Philippines, from Italy, American, of course, illustrating these books. So those are kind of my presence in the stores for most part. Okay. And then I've been self-publishing. Most recently, I've done stuff there's a line of comics called Trolls, which has nothing to do with the little Kewpie dolls that DreamWorks animates. Yeah. Trolls is lingo for air traffic controllers. Oh. And it's about a couple of slacker air traffic controllers who work in the Sky Harbor Tower in Phoenix. And one weekend when their supervisor is away, they decide to make a little extra money by throwing pulling a double shift at work. And while they're doing their double shift, they throw a little party, invite the girls from security, and before you know it, no one's watching the planes, and all bedlam, breaks loose. And I've done 2 of these already. I'm doing a 3rd one now. So that's self-published work. Okay. And I've done one-off self-published comics. There's one called The War on Dental, which is basically dragons versus dentists. Mm-hmm. It's quite an odyssey. And I do a lot of self-publish. Along the way, I've written comics for the Simpsons people, like Bart Simpson comics. Right. Boingo, and Gumby and Pokey comics.
Okay. And didn't you do, wasn't there something else? Oh, you just said Gumby and Pokey. I was saying, didn't you do a Gumby and Pokey comic?
Yeah, that one. So here's what happened. So Mel Smith, who does the metal books that I just mentioned, before he did those, he had the license for the Gumby and Pokey comics. And this is in cooperation with the Art Clokey estate. So Art Clokey was still alive, and actually Joe Clokey, his son, was still alive. He has since passed away, even though he was very young, like 48. Yeah. And while Joe was really operating the estate because Art was already in a wheelchair and in his 90s and kind of out of it. And so this is in 2009, 2010, a little earlier actually, 2008. Mel invited me on board to contribute because he was rolling with the Gumby comics that were getting, I believe, Eisner Awards, I think with Bob Burden's participation from Flaming Carrot, the creator of Flaming Carrot. And he had seen that Art Clokey did a foreword in my Unstoppable Rogues comic. And I had actually gone all the way to Marin County and visited Art Clokey to get him to do that foreword in the 90s. Wow. And anyway, so 2008, I wanted to do here's what happened. I pitched Mel. He asked me to do some kind of Gumby or Pokey comic, and I pitched him a solo book of my favorite Gumby and Pokey character, which was Prickle. Oh. The yellow one, that no one is quite sure whether he's really a dinosaur or a dragon. Right. And in fact, my comic book about Prickle was about Prickle going on an identity search around the world to try to determine whether he is a dragon or a dinosaur. And so, it winds up with him in England in Stonehenge, and he finds the Loch Ness Monster. He thinks he's related. It's quite an odyssey. And Mel loved it, but he goes, you know what? We're going to do a 4-issue miniseries. You're going to write all 4 with all of Gumby's supporting cast, but we can't come out of the gate with Prickle. So he's like, let's start with Pokey. So the series was called Gumby's Gang Starring. And so the first one was Pokey. Number 2 was going to be Prickle. Number 3 was going to be the Blockheads. And number 4 was going to be Goo.
Right. Goo.
And so what happened was we successfully published Gumby's Gang Starring Pokey in 2010. And I wrote it, and a guy named Rafael Navarro drew it. And we had an artist working on Prickle, and then Mel had a falling out with the Gumby estate.
Yeah.
So he walked away from renewing the license. So essentially, I had written all 4, but only Pokey was published. So that was the tragedy. And Prickle was like halfway drawn.
Wow.
And the Blockheads and Goo never got out of the gate. So I'm a little disappointed to this day because they were really fun, and it would have been great to at least get Prickle out because that was the whole reason I wanted to do it, you know?
Right. And you mentioned that story, and I go, I'm not familiar with that story because I did read the Pokey one, and I'm like, oh, never got published. I get it. Okay. So
unfortunately we never got far enough, but that's the way it was supposed to go. And then so he walked away from it. Unfortunately, Joe Clokey died. I mean, Art Clokey died first, and then Joe Clokey died. And then it just after that he really gave up on the whole Gumby Pokey thing, and he was looking for like a second act, like what can I do? And so he decided to. He had watched a documentary on Todd Warren, and who was murdered, and they think that he may have even been the first victim of the Versace murders, the same guy. But anyway, he decided to resume the rock and roll comics, and so what he did in around 2014, he thought of me, because we had worked very well on the Pokey book and the other Gumby stuff that didn't materialize, and so. That's how I got hired by him to write that. And I think we have, there's at least, I've written about 15 to maybe 20 of the rock and roll comics, and we have around at least 9 or 10 of them out right now that I've.
Now, on these books, are they strictly biographical, or are they just stories about these bands?
Yeah, there's a little bit of fantasy element in some of them, but they are essentially... they are autobiographical. They are unauthorized biographical comics.
Yeah, that was my next question. Did you get permission to do this?
Yeah, there's no permission, but at the same time, it's not illegal because, if you go to any Barnes & Noble, there are shelves lined with books about the Beatles and U2 and the Beastie Boys. Anyone can write a book. You just can't really tread on any copyrighted material. So, so they're unauthorized. And the other side of it, though, is Mel, who lives near Berkeley, has very good relations. He's really into the music world and knows a lot of musicians, and he's built a lot of goodwill with a lot of musicians. And actually, almost every band that we've done biographicals on, there are members of the group that not only applaud us and support what we've done, but even try to sell it at their concerts, like Exodus.
Okay.
And there's one other band, I can't remember right now, but they took it on the road,
Right.
Kerry King is photographed in the Slayer book because he embraced the ash can that we did. Tom Araya, the lead singer of Slayer, was not as pleased, but Kerry King loved it. And Gary Holt from Exodus, who also became a member of Slayer, he loved the Exodus book, and they sold that at their concerts. The only band, before you ask, the only band that has really actively hated what we did and tried to stop us was Guar.
Wow. Why?
Yeah, and that was funny. Guar, all the way from Virginia, they had like they have an attorney who sent a cease and desist to Mel to stop putting out. They caught wind because we had I think a mini comic preview, like an ash can. Mm-hmm. And they tried to stop the Guar comic, but legally they didn't have a leg to stand on. Right. So Mel laughed it off, and they eventually wound up putting out their own Guar comics as a result of us. They rushed out some comics. And by the way, Slayer did the same thing. They put out comics after our biographical with Dark Horse. So we in a weird way think that we kind of kind of cornered Slayer and Guar into putting out their own comics. Probably erroneously, they thought that they were there was a lot of money to be made in comics, and that we were draining them of profits. Little do they know how little money there is to be made in comics. So, but we unfortunately put them down the rabbit hole of creating their own comics, at their own risk, financial risk.
That's funny.
We will be back after this message.
Hi, I'm George Takei. You know me as Helmsman Sulu on Star Trek. When I'm not busy going Warp Factor 8, I like to beam down to Lee's Comics in Mountain View and spend a lazy afternoon reading comics classics from Marvel to DC, from Dark Horse to Fantagraphics, and everything in between. So please, spend some time here at Lee's Comics and spend your hard-earned cash.
The Fun Ideas podcast is made possible by listeners like you and from Lee's Comics of California, selling you what your mother threw out since 1982, online at leescomics.com. And now back to the Fun Ideas podcast.
You mentioned, some of the other ones you're venturing off to. Is there ones that you'd like to do, or that? Do you get to choose who you do the bios on, or does it have to be with cooperation with anybody?
So Mel, being the publisher and editor, he first of all, a side note about Mel. He's a pretty brazen, amazing guy. Did you ever meet him?
I think Mark? I might have. If he's ever been at your table, I have.
Yes, okay, you probably met him.
Yeah.
He's a pretty amazing guy in terms of comics, because he's a real straight shooter. He's excuse me here. He's a very honest guy, and that's why I like him. And he's also very original in the sense that he doesn't try to pander to the market. He does what, he goes on strange tangents in terms of what he does. And so he had a book called Dead Ahead, which was actually drawn by a very famous 70s Filipino artist, Alex Nino.
Okay. Yeah.
Alex Nino did a lot of art, kind of like Tony DeZuniga. He was part of that wave. He did a lot of art for DC, like House of Mystery, House of Secrets, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And together they did a thing called Dead Ahead, which was essentially, the concept was essentially zombies at sea. And so what happened was, concepts from Dead Ahead wound up in because of Mel was trying to auction it for Hollywood, to make a movie on it, and Mosaic was interested, and he was being kind of courted for a while, and a bunch of people in the industry caught wind of it, essentially producer types, writer types, and long story short, concepts from Dead Ahead wound up in The Last Ship and Fear the Walking Dead.
Okay.
Because Robert Kirkman was very aware of his book. A woman named Gloria Fan, who was a development agent at Mosaic, was courting him for this book, and she wound up being a producer at The Last Ship. And long story short, he wound up successfully, earlier this year in 2019, suing Robert Kirkman and Fear the Walking Dead, and they settled with him, and he made a lot of money from a settlement. So, and essentially, he won that lawsuit. essentially.
Wow.
It was publicized in the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and all those sites and all the trade sites. And with that money, he's been, keeping it going, his line of comics. This was in March, I believe, his legal victory. And so that's going to just fuel a lot more of these metal. And just when anyone thought he was going to calm down, he's got all these books ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a lot in the works. Some of the titles that we have coming up. So I've already written, me personally, have written Slayer, Metallica, Pantera, No Effects, which was our first punk book. What else? Rob Zombie, White Zombie, which is a flip book.
Okay.
I've written Exodus, Testament. Those all came out. And System of a Down and Tool.
Okay.
And so what we have ahead is Judas Priest was supposed to be our second book. For some reason, that had the most problems. Like, there have been many artists that have fallen out on it. Judas Priest is finally coming on board. We're going to have... we have ahead Oingo Boingo. We have K-pop. We're going to have our first K-pop thing, which I mentioned, To Anyone. We're going to have Sublime is the next book that's coming out. Judas Priest. Let's see. Anyway, we got a lot that I've written. A full issue of Gwar. And anyway. So yeah, the way it works is he has assigned most of the bands that he thinks has, his rule has been not to do any bands that were done by Todd Loren back in the day.
Oh, when the rock comics were being done?
Yeah. So, Revolutionary Comics. So,
yep.
That's his one rule. So he wants to do bands that have not been covered. The only time we broke that rule was Metallica. However, there was a little bit of a catch there. With Metallica, the way he worked around that, Metallica was only covered until like the Black Album, because it came out like very early in their career.
Right.
And so actually before the Black Album, I think, and Justice for All, the fourth album.
Yep.
So we picked it up. Our Metallica biographical is from the Black Album on. So basically, in my opinion, the years that no one really cares about as much creatively, when they became more corporate and like some kind of monster came out. So we're like Black Album from that point on. That's what this one covers. But that's an unusual book. Most of the comics are spotlighting bands that have never been done. And in the case of the K-pop, I've been going down a K-pop rabbit hole, so I suggested we do To Anyone. And to our knowledge, it'll be the first ever K-pop biographical comic, at least in America, in the English-speaking world and in the Western world. And we're going to have an artist named Queenie Chan illustrate that. She's a manga artist who's based in Sydney, Australia, a very talented cartoonist.
Now, how do you get your artists for these books? Do you put out a casting call, as it were, or do people come to you, or both?
In some cases, they've come to me, but it's really Mel's doing. He matches the artist. In the case of Queenie, I found her. She's a Facebook friend that I happened onto, and she has a perfect style for it. So I brought her into the fold, and we have, I think, a Weezer comic next year as well, and I brought the artist into the fold. But mostly it's Mel's doing. Mel has a network of artists that he's already been working with for. They've illustrated multiple books, each one that I've written.
Right.
And so it's mostly his handling, and most of the stuff was assigned by him. It's his label, and he kind of has a feeling on what he thinks will be like the bands that will do well. Mm-hmm. And we also have Misfits, Suicidal Tendencies coming out. Those just popped into my head, so those are also on the horizon.
Very good. Now, do you still do your writing for other things like the Palisadian Post and then Back Issue and Comic Book Creator?
Yeah, so I for many years I wrote for Back Issue magazine with Mike Urey, and then I stopped doing that and segued to write. I became an associate editor on Comic Book Creator magazine for John B. Cook, and so that magazine Comic Book Reader, I think, is on its 21st issue.
Mm-hmm.
I was more active early on as an associate editor. John Cook eventually just became the prime editor on it, and essentially has just been running my articles. So
Okay.
I took less and less of a role, not by choice, but because he kind of moved in a direction where he had a clear idea of what he wanted to do, and he didn't really consult with me in terms of planning the issues after, I would say, like issue 7 or 8. So, which is fine. I mean, I'm not bitter or anything. I'm kind of busy as it is. So,
Right.
But I wrote so much material that he's been running it to this day. He still hasn't run all of my material in terms of the articles I contributed. So we just got through a 3-part interview with Rich Buckler, which unfortunately it was finished before he died, but unfortunately it just began running after he died.
Wow.
But each part has run in a different issue, so that just wrapped up. And then I have a Pablo Marcos interview that he's going to run next, and then we actually have an interview with Mel Smith that we're going to run. So I'm still a contributor, but it's like stuff that I finished like years ago, as it turns out, because he takes a while to put those out.
Right,
it takes
right.
like, I don't know, 4 months to put an issue out, and he tends to sidetrack himself from putting my articles out because he has other articles that come in between. So that's the way it's been going. It's been kind of a slow burn, but I do contribute to that. And yeah, I do a lot of journalism to pay the bills. I still contribute features and restaurant reviews to the Palisadian Post and Pacific Palisades.
Mm-hmm.
My prime journalism work at the moment, I'm on staff for essentially the LA Business Journal. I'm a writer for those guys. I cover commercial real estate, which has been fun for the last 2 years. Very different than what I'm used to covering, which is arts and entertainment.
Right. That's very good. And then you did, at one point, I think you told me this before, you writing copy for movie posters at some time.
Yeah, that was a really funny. Before I got into journalism, for 1 year, 1997 to be exact, I was like pounding out the taglines on movie posters. There used to be a company called Intralink, and they were a movie industry ad agency based in essentially West Hollywood, Beverly Hills area, and I wound up freelancing for them, and for a very short period of time I was writing these taglines, and so a lot of the movies that came out in 97 have my poster taglines on it. For instance, The Mask of Zorro and Eve's Bayou, which I remember the tagline was Love Can Lead You to a Dangerous Place. The Eve's Bayou was a movie with Sam Jackson, and it was like a voodoo love story by Kazi Lemons, who just did a movie called Harriet about Harriet Tubman, and like literally like last month or something. And anyway, so I did that tagline. I did the tagline for I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was, if you want to bury the truth, make sure it stays buried. And I actually competed against the Twister girl. There was a woman who won an award, I think it's called the Key Advertising Award, for the tagline for Twister, which was the dark side of nature. It was something very elemental like that. She had won an award, and I was actually pitted on a conference call against her for the I Know What You Did Last Summer assignment, and my tagline wound up winning, being used on the posters. And so what was funny, though, a funny follow-up, so that came out, I think, in 97, the I Know What You Did Last Summer tagline, and then this was funny. So many years later, 2004, in August of 2004, I remember because Collateral was on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, which was the movie, the Michael Mann movie with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I pick up this in a newsstand. I'm thumbing through an issue of Entertainment Weekly, and they used to have a feature on the last page called the Pop Quiz. And it was a pop culture quiz, and one of the questions was, from which movie did the poster have the tagline, if you want to bury the truth and make sure it stays buried? And then they were going to give the answer in the following issue. And I'm like, hey, I know that one. I actually wrote it. It was bizarre. It was funny that they out of all the posters in the world, they picked that.
Right.
And so in August of 2004, Entertainment Weekly unwittingly turned me into a trivia question.
Yay.
In their issue. So that was cool.
So
that was random. Yeah.
Apart from all the writing and even artwork that you do, I mean, what do you do in your spare time? Are you still catching all the latest movies, or you tend to watch older stuff, or see concerts because of writing all those punk and heavy metal bios and things like that, or?
I don't go to concerts as much as I used to. I'm kind of selective on those. I mean, I never was a huge concert goer. I would go to groups. I like a lot of rap. I like a lot of I used to see a lot of metal, rap, punk, whatever. But more movies. Actually, even less movies than I used to, because they've really become so CG'd out. And so generic and mediocre. I've kind of lost interest in like studio movies, but I do seek out independent cinema that interests me, like the Jim Jarmushes of the world, and the Alexander Paynes of the world. Like, I like filmmakers that are still making movies, that are have human elements in it, and of course, all the talent has really floated to the streamers and TV. And what we call TV, but peak TV, streamers.
Right. Right.
I have three channels these days. Like, I cut the cord. All I have is HBO, Netflix, and Amazon Prime, and basically that's where all my entertainment, especially HBO. I love the comedies on HBO and some of the dramas, and some of my favorite shows these days are like I love Barry. I love Fleabag on Amazon Prime. I loved the first season of Divorce, the first 4 seasons of Silicon Valley, anything with Danny McBride, all those shows, Eastbound, Vice Principals, Righteous Gemstones, Mindhunter on Netflix is great. Some of the absurdist shows like the Eric Andre show, or like I Think You Should Leave Now with Tim Robinson, I like that kind of absurdism. So truth be told, I think a lot of the best material, Fargo's a great show on FX, True Detective first season. So I'm kind of a mix of all kinds of dramas and comedies that are really solid out there. That's kind of what I'm into more than movies. Unfortunately, movies are not what they used to be. I mean, to me, the heyday of cinema was really the 70s Hollywood, and earlier. And these days, I think the best movies are either foreign or independent, if you can find independent. I mean, it's harder and harder to find independent movies. So, that's kind of what speaks to me the most, But yeah, I am technically a big cinephile, but not in practice in terms of Hollywood stuff these days. It's
right.
very. I see most of my Hollywood studio stuff at the $1 theater in my town, so that if it's really lame, I can walk out of it and maybe complain that I've lost 75 cents because I've stayed for 3/4 of the movie, or 50 cents, walking out midway through the movie. So, because I mean, really, I think they're so bad that they're just not worth top dollar, and I'm not that enthusiastic about running out to see them.
Do they have any good independent film festivals down in LA? I haven't been down there in years for that, so I don't know.
Film festivals? I'm not sure. I don't really go to film festivals to see them.
Okay.
I would say, to talk about the subject, like in terms of cinema this year, my 2 favorite movies so far, I mean, there's only been really 2 movies that I've enjoyed, that I've seen in the theater. Not that I've seen every single, acclaimed movie, but the ones that spoke to me, I really liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I thought that was the best movie.
Yeah.
That I saw all year. Very entertaining. And a distant second, I would say, is Parasite, the Korean movie, class warfare comedy, or dark comedy, or satire, whatever you want to call it, which I think would have been better had I not seen Shoplifters last year, the Japanese Oscar contender, because Shoplifters was about a family of grifters, and Parasite is about a family of grifters, but the storyline's different. They infiltrate this rich family But both are great movies. But there was a little bit of deja vu when I saw Parasite because that huge element seemed to be borrowed from the Koreeda film Shoplifters. So, but that's the kind of stuff that I really seek out in terms of cinema. And the Marvel DC stuff, they're really iffy. Here and there, they're good ones, but especially the Disney Marvel ones, I'm not really into. I don't like the whole Kevin Feige line of Marvel movies. My favorite Marvel movies have been made by other studios. I like the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man. I like the better X-Men movies like First Class and Days of Future Past. And I like the Ed Norton Hulk back then. And I don't like a lot of the Disney Marvel movies, unfortunately. And with DC movies, it's kind of the same. It's like some are okay and some are pretty bad. So, that's kind of how I feel about superhero movies, I guess.
Now, do you follow any certain directors? I mean, you mentioned Tarantino, but are there others you like are must-see directors that you follow, or is it usually just the film?
Yeah, like Tarantino is not even one of my favorite filmmakers, but I really loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I loved Inglourious Basterds. Those two are my personal favorites. The ones I really try to go to the theater for. Jim Jarmusch, even though I loved Patterson from 2016, but oddly enough, the one he released this year, The Dead Don't Die, the zombie movie, is one of my least favorites of his, as it turned out. But even though it had a great cast, but did you see it by any chance?
I have not. I wanted to, but then, I was wary, and I don't see everything. I'm like you. It's like I try to see as much as I can. I'm just wary when it's zombie stuff because it's like, haven't they done enough zombie stuff?
Exactly, it's been done to death, and he did his twist on vampire lore a few years ago. With that movie in 2014, I think, Only Lovers Left Alive, which I think was more successful. I mean, I guess I don't like when he goes into genre stuff. That was an okay movie. It wasn't my favorite, but it was better than the zombie movie. But I like when he does more his own kind of, Mystery Train is probably my all-time favorite Jim Jarmusch movie, and I love his earlier movies, and so he's a must-see because he's always doing something interesting. Whether or not they're all successful is another thing, but he's daring, and I like filmmakers like him. Alexander Payne is another one, Sideways, The Descendants, Nebraska, and he did a movie that was kind of a lesser movie, which was The Downsizing. I didn't like that much.
I didn't like that one as much either. It's kind of weird, but yeah.
But he's a guy that he still has a lot of goodwill with me because he's trying different things. They're always, Woody Allen has had a lot of movies that I've loved over the years, and he's also had a lot of failures. But when he's on, he's really on. Especially in the '70s, Woody Allen for me, as far as comedies, are kind of unbeatable. Right. And more recently, I would say Blue Jasmine stood out for me. Which is a drama It's not even it's a dark comedy masquerading as a drama. Blue Jasmine was really amazing in that way, that it was actually very funny, but it was so straight-faced that you kind of look at it as a drama. Midnight in Paris was not bad, but in terms of individual filmmakers, I used to like Wes Anderson a lot more than I do now. I think he's become very repetitive, but his earlier stuff is great. I thought Rushmore, Life Aquatic, and I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of, I can't think off the top of my head who else, but I like filmmakers like that who are trying to say or do different things and not just going for cookie cutter generic type movies.
Do you like Coen Brothers?
Oh yeah, of course, Coen Brothers. Okay. Yeah, Coen Brothers, of course. Yeah. Big Lebowski, one of my favorites. Hudsucker Proxy. Yeah. And let's see, more recently, trying to think, Hail Caesar was a big misfire for me, but again, they're always going to be kind of on and off. There'll always be movies where they're maybe not as good, but it doesn't take away from their best work, you know.
Right. I did like their most recent one they did for Netflix, the Buster Scruggs. A little uneven, but I mean, some of the stories are really good. They're like classic Coen Brothers, so it's worth a watch if you take a shot at it.
Yeah, the thing about the Coen Brothers, though, like the other guys we mentioned, is they take risks, and they're, inside Lloyd, what was it? Inside Lloyd David?
Lloyd Llewellyn, that one? Is that what it's called?
No, it's not Lloyd Llewellyn. It's Lloyd, God, what is it? Is it Lloyd Llewellyn? Is that what it is?
I thought it was Llewellyn, but yeah, I could be wrong. Anyway, but yeah, I know I know the film you're talking about. Yeah, he's a musician.
Yeah, anyway, the one with Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Anyway, that movie was great, and it had Adam Driver in it. Adam Driver was sensational in Jarmusch's Patterson movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought terrific movie. And he's by the way, he's a great actor, and I'm looking forward to seeing Marriage Story. He was like one of the best elements in Black Klansman, which I thought kind of the last half hour really lost me. It became too jokey, and it was like, let's prank David Duke, and let's prank, like the FBI or the police would not do that. Like, reveal that they were staking him out and pulling a charade on him. But it descended into silliness and comeuppance at the end. That wasn't very realistic. But until then, Adam Driver was a great element of Black Klansman, along with Denzel's son, good actors. But yeah, no, I don't know. I like, anyway, I just try to seek out, like, interesting movies that way. It's been a long time it's been bad for comedy. Cinema has been really bad for comedy in recent years.
Yes.
The last, because comedy's kind of fallen out of fashion, and the last great comedy that I can think of that I saw in the movies that I loved was Role Models, that Paul Rudd movie.
I don't think I've seen that one. Wow.
Yeah, Paul Rudd stars in it, and he co-wrote it, and David Wayne directed it, and the guy who's behind the Wet Hot American Summer stuff, and the National Lampoon movie on Netflix, and anyway, it's hard to find good comedies these days in the movies. There used to be a time where you could see a lot of them, but I think all the best comedies are coming out of like HBO or streamers,
Yeah, it seems like the most recent, and I won't name any names, so the most recent theatrical comedies I've seen, they just go for the total raunch. And I'm not any prude by any means, if raunch is just there to be there, it just kind of bores me. I mean, you have to do it creatively if you're going to do something really raunchy and gross or something like that in a comedy. But I don't know if you found this similar thing with that.
Yeah, Todd Phillips, the guy who did the Joker movie, he did all those Hangover movies, and I think that kind of that and the Seth Rogen stuff kind of tilted things in that direction. And I'm not, I don't have any hard rules about it, but it has to be really funny. And I think some of those movies were not that funny.
Yeah.
I did like, oddly enough, Todd Phillips did a movie called School for Scoundrels, which was like a remake.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was hilarious.
Yeah, actually, I did like that.
Mm-hmm. And then the Seth Rogen bunch, the Apatow bunch, I don't really like their movies in general. I don't think they're very, once in a while there's like Pineapple Express, or which I liked enough, or This Is the End was okay, but like most of those movies kind of leave me cold. And it's, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think there was kind of a upping the ante of like gross out and stuff like that. Wouldn't bother me as much if it were actually funny.
That's my point. It's like, if you're going to do gross out, make it funny. If it's just there just to gross out, or worse, it's just there and it doesn't have any purpose at all. And it's like, okay, whatever. You mentioned
it makes me appreciate John Landis. John Landis being probably one of my favorite all-time directors of comedy, with just Animal House and Blues Brothers alone, that he got away, he did these great movies that, when you look back on it, they're not as out there as the stuff that has come out since, but yet are very edgy and they're very funny.
Right.
And politically incorrect, but funny. And, the fact that he was so skillful and could make a movie like that that by today's standards would be tame in terms of, like, the censors censoring anything like language or nudity or anything, but so clever, and really that's what it comes down to. It's got to be clever, and you can get away with a lot. Mindhunter is a great series because, have you seen Mindhunter on Netflix?
No, I haven't. Okay.
Well, Mindhunter and even the first season of True Detective, given the topics that they're about, especially Mindhunter, there's not a lot of vulgarity or grisly. There's really very little in terms of like anything gross out, or there's really nothing in Mindhunter. It's all psychological. It's all in the writing, and I admire that more than something that is just explicit. And
right.
I think the same with comics. Like when you're doing humor comics or whatever. I mean, in my comics, I've done a little bit of shock value, but definitely not overboard. Just maybe enough just to spike the punch a little bit. But I don't believe in overdoing it. I don't believe in going that route. I don't think it makes it any funnier, unless there's a real point to it. And the best filmmakers, I think, can get away with expressing something without having to go that route. The skillful ones.
Right.
And so I agree with you totally on that when it comes, and it's nothing to do with being a prude because, it's nothing to do with that. I've seen, porn in my day. I'm not a prude, but, it's more just like, it's boring if you don't do it well. It's boring if you just show us everything. And, Hitchcock and Orson Welles, they made very suspenseful movies without showing anything graphic. And, there's something masterful about that, so it's definitely something to strive for, I think, in art.
Right. The classic is, of course, Psycho. Everybody thinks, I could have sworn I saw the knife go in her body. Nope.
Right.
Yeah. It's just...
Yeah, it's one of the most clever sequences. I mean, the way it's edited and directed, and it's like, they kind of knew that. They knew that they didn't have to show anything to scare people, and in those days, I guess they had to run around the censors. I mean, that said, I mean, Sam Peckinpah is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers.
Yeah.
And now he, of course, he basically helped introduce naturalistic, if you want to call it that, or whatever, realistic, gory violence to movies.
Right.
However, he's kind of a special case in my mind. I thought Sam Peckinpah was actually anti-violence. I mean, if you look at every one of his movies, like The Wild Bunch and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid and Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, all of which I love, are among my favorite movies. The protagonist or the antagonist, whatever, the anti-hero, they always die at the end of the movie, for all of the violence that they are responsible for in the movie. They never meet a happy ending. Every one of those characters winds up, dead. And I think that was the point of his movies. They were to show the folly of man and the folly of violence. And Peckinpah was a real master. And unless you're a master, I don't think you should go there with explicit violence. It's very hard to do, and do it legitimately, So, I mean, that's one example where I would say kind of violates my rule of violence in movies, But, that's a very rare kind of thing,
Yeah, but it sounds similar to having excessive, gratuitous sex or whatever in a comedy. If there's gratuitous violence in a film like Peckinpah's, if there's a purpose and a meaning and a reason, it seems to be all right. So.
Right, if they're going for some kind of gag, that'll pay off.
Right.
If it's just for titillation, or because we can, I think that's the wrong reasons. Like some people criticize some shows on HBO because they're, I don't know, maybe a Game of Thrones type thing. Or my friend actually criticized Barry because he thought it went way too violent, just because they can on HBO. And, he may have a point. I actually love Barry, and he was talking about the season finale on season 2, and, I would have to agree it was not my favorite episode of Barry, and, if I could choose, I would rather not see people get shot in the head with pools of blood. But, Sometimes there's a point to it, and it's a little unsettling, but it adds up to something larger. So I don't know. It's a case by case thing, I guess. But in general, yeah, I'm not bloodthirsty, and I'm not looking for gratuitous sex in my entertainment. So
right.
I think if it's done smartly, anything could be kind of legitimate. But not a lot of people can do it smartly. That's the thing. Or the copycats, who copy the like in the 80s, we had some legitimately great teen comedies, like the Fast Times at Ridgemont Highs, and and before you know it, you got Porky's 3 and joysticks, like eventually, the copycats don't do a great job of getting that Animal House or Fast Times vibe, and they just they take the most superficial aspects of those movies and exploit it, So anyway, but
they totally missed the point.
You can say that of any genre, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming to that time where I just kind of say, hey, it's been great talking to you, but how do people get a hold of you, and what projects are you working on? And you can plug a book, you can plug a website, plug anything. Go for it.
Okay, well, I'm just going to plug. My website is down at the moment. I am going to create a new website, so unfortunately I can't plug that. But I do have my imprint is Cartoon Flophouse Comics, and I do have a page devoted to Cartoon Flophouse humor comics on Facebook, its own page, in addition to my personal Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook and you do a search for Cartoon Flophouse Comics, you can find my page there, and that's about the closest thing to a website I have at the moment.
Okay.
Until I get my website going again. And then as far as new projects, I am currently working on a third Trolls book right now, and I have a graphic novel I'm also noodling on called Humpty Dumpty and Pinocchio in Vegas, which is going to take much longer, but that's a fun project that I can't wait to unveil. And I'm going to continue writing those metal, punk, rap, K-pop, new wave, unauthorized biographical comics for Mel Smith's company. So that's kind of what's going on. And I'll end this great conversation, thank you, by saying that I will be at Comic-Con in San Diego in the summer of 2020. I just got approved, so find me at my booth. It's N13 in Small Press.
All right.
N13 at Small Press, summer of 2020, so see you there.
Any other personal appearances during 2020, or just San Diego at this time?
I will be at the Latino Comics Fest in Modesto in March, and the San Diego Comic Fest
All right.
in San Diego in March. Both in March.
All right.
And can Google for the dates. I don't have them handy, but that's March
fine.
2020. Yep.
All right. Sounds very good, and we'll keep watch for that and any projects you're working on. And it was a pleasure talking with you today, Michael, and we'll talk soon. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Michael Aushenker, for being my special guest. Episode number 60 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Pills in the pink of your illusion.